Of the opposition go head-to-head at Prime Minister's questions. For the first time, indeed, we'll have full coverage of every moment, every spit and cough, and getting full reaction from our panel here at the studio at GB News. Labour MP for Makerfield, Josh Simons, and Tory MP for Grantham and Bourne, Gareth Davies.
And we've just got a minute and a half or so before we take you live to that first battle between Kemi and Keir. But first, if I can turn to you, Gareth, our Conservative spokesperson today. Big news overnight. Donald Trump is back in the White House, or he will be from January. What lessons do you, as a Conservative Party, take from that? Is the centre dead? Is it time to just be, you know, sort of scrap all that wishy-washy stuff, move to clear blue water?
I think, look, it's hard, two different countries, but the principle here, I think, is one that everybody can learn, which is if you fight an election on the economy, on keeping inflation down, reducing taxation, making sure an economy grows, that is typically what resonates with most people. And then secondly, it's about sharing the values of most people in the country who want, you know, less government, less intrusion on their businesses, less taxes, of course. And I think that is something I think we can all take away from Donald Trump's victory.
Yeah, just watching images there from the Commons chamber. But to you quickly, Josh Simons, is Andrew Pearce right? Is it time for an apology from people like David Lammy for calling the new President of the United States racist and a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath?
Well, I was in the US in 2016, the last time that Donald Trump won an election. And I think today, you know, democracy's spoken and I respect it. And the lesson for Labour and our government is clear that we have to stay focused on the concerns, on the values, on the money in the pocket, on our borders, the things that working people care about. And if we drift from it, we will be punished at the ballot.
You and Gareth, you both have American wives. I wonder how they're reacting. You must be aware, you're more aware than many viewers, I think, about how Americans vote, why they voted Trump. Do you understand why they voted Trump and not Kamala Harris, who is more of a pleasing person, maybe, for social media on the left?
Well, my wife's from rural North Carolina that's just voted for Donald Trump. And, you know, many of her friends are Republicans, some of them not still Republicans, some of them are converted Republicans. So, yeah, you know, unless we make sure that the money people feel in their pockets and the values...
We are going to Prime Minister's questions.
Trump on his historic election victory. As the closest of allies, the UK and US will continue to work together to protect our shared values of freedom and democracy. And having had dinner with President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago, I look forward to working with him in the years to come. May I also welcome the Leader of the Opposition to her place, my fourth Tory leader in 4.5 years. But I do look forward to working with her in the interests of the British public. Mr. Speaker, this weekend is Remembrance Sunday, and people across the country will come together to pay solemn tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice, defending the values and freedoms that we enjoy today. And I'm sure the entire House will join me in paying tribute to them. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Dame Caroline.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Susan is going to miss out on her winter fuel allowance this winter because she's just £10 above the pension credit threshold. So as well as losing out on this vital money to keep her house warm, she also doesn't get the £150 warm home discount. She doesn't get the £169 free TV licence or free NHS prescriptions. For the sake of a tenner, Prime Minister, is this fair?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we passed a budget which was to fix the foundations of this country and to rebuild our country. And one of the issues we had to confront was the £22 billion black hole that was left by the last government. We've taken the tough decisions. That will stabilise our economy. That means we can commit to the triple lock, and that means that pensioners will be better off seeing the increase in their pension they would have been under the party opposite.
Jacob Collier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every week I meet hard-working families in Burton and Uttoxeter who are juggling raising their children and their family finances when they hear the party opposite and its new leader say that maternity pay has gone too far. They are terrified about what this means for them. To ease the worry felt by thousands of hard-working families, can the Prime Minister please commit that he has no plans to change maternity pay or to roll back the hard-won rights of working families?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. He's a champion for families in his constituency. My answer is simple, yes. And I don't agree with the Leader of the Opposition when she says that maternity pay is excessive and that it's gone too far.
I come to the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Prime Minister for his almost warm welcome, and can I also echo the comments that he has made. It is an immense privilege and the honour of my life to lead the Conservative Party, and I look forward to joining him at the Cenotaph this Remembrance Sunday. As Leader of His Majesty's Opposition, I will be taking a different approach to the last opposition by being a constructive opposition. And so I would like to start by congratulating President-elect Trump on his impressive victory this morning. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary met him in September. Did the Foreign Secretary take that opportunity to apologise for making derogatory and scatological references, including, and I quote, "Trump is not only a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, he is also a profound threat to the international order"? And if he did not apologise, will the Prime Minister do so now on his behalf?
Mr. Speaker, there will be many issues on which the Leader of the Opposition and I disagree, but there will be issues that do unite this House on national security and Ukraine, and I do look forward to working closely with her on that, and I will provide her with the information that she needs to discharge her duties. That's the right thing for the country, and it's far more important than party politics. And the Foreign Secretary and I did meet President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago for dinner for about a couple of hours, and we discussed a number of issues of global significance. It was a very constructive exercise.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister did not distance himself from the remarks made by the Foreign Secretary, and I'm very sure that President Trump will soon be calling to thank him for sending all of those North London Labour activists to campaign for his opponent. Given that most of his cabinet signed a motion to ban President Trump from addressing Parliament, will the Prime Minister show that he and his government can be more than student politicians by asking the Speaker to extend? Can they show that they can be more than student politicians?
Order. Mr. Perkins, I don't need to anymore. Your voice curries, it's like mine, too loud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister show that he and his government can be more than student politicians by asking you, Mr. Speaker, to extend an invitation to President Trump to address Parliament on his next visit?
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is giving a masterclass on student politics. Seriously, Mr. Speaker, we live in probably a more volatile world than we've lived in for many decades. It is absolutely crucial that we have a strong relationship, that strong special relationship forged in difficult circumstances between the US and the UK. We will continue to work, as we have done in the 4 months in government, on issues of security, our economy and global conflict.
Mr. Speaker, he does not answer the questions, just read the lines the officials have prepared for him. It doesn't sound like he wants to invite President-elect Trump to Parliament. He needs to look after the special relationship. The US is our single biggest trade partner. Given the risk of increased tariffs on UK exports, which threaten our manufacturing sector, will the Prime Minister commit now to continue the negotiations on our free trade agreement with the US, which the Biden administration cancelled when they came into office?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, of course we will discuss issues of our economy with the President-elect, as we already have done. Economy, security and global conflict are issues of real significance that ought to unite this House. But when it comes to the economy, what we've done with our budget is to fix the foundations after 14 years. Return to economic stability of the £23 million black hole. We've protected the pay slips of working people. We've done the single biggest investment in our country for a generation in the NHS, in schools and homes. We've given a pay rise to the 3 million lowest paid. If she's opposed to that investment or the pay rise for working people, she's a straight talker as I understand it, perhaps she should say so.
Mr. Speaker, discuss, chat. He has no plans whatsoever. No plans whatsoever for building on the special relationship. He needs to realise that we in this country rely on our single biggest trade partner. President Trump is also right to argue that Europe needs to increase its defence spending. The last Conservative government committed to raising defence spending to 2.5% by 2030. Will the Prime Minister finally match this commitment?
Mr. Speaker, there is no more important duty than keeping the people of this country safe. And it was the Labour government that signed the NATO treaty in the first place, and we are strong supporters. We have a strategic defence review. We are committed to 2.5%. Well, I would remind the last time 2.5 was met was under the last Labour government. 14 years, and they never did it once. Last year, the NAO identified a £17 billion black hole in the MOD finances. The former Defence Secretary said the previous government hollowed out the armed forces, and the plan they put forward at the election was pure fantasy.
Mr. Speaker, he will not make that commitment. That is very clear. All that he is doing...
I'm going to hear the questions. If the people who don't want to hear it, they can leave now. Come on.
Mr. Speaker, he will not make that commitment, and yet the world is getting more dangerous. His Chancellor's budget did not even mention defence. The Chancellor's budget last week was a copy and paste of Bidenomics. It turns out that a high spending, high borrowing, high inflation approach is less popular than she may have thought. May I suggest he now urge her to change course, or is he determined to be a one-term leader?
The one thing I learned as Leader of the Opposition is it's a good idea to listen to what the government is actually saying. I think she just said that defence wasn't mentioned in the budget. It was 7 days ago that it was absolutely clear and central to the budget, as was economic growth. We are fixing the foundations. We're giving a pay rise to millions of people. We're picking up the mess that they left, 22 billion, and a tax rise and a pay rise for working people. And I haven't heard yet her welcome that pay rise for the 3 million lowest paid workers. Does she now welcome it to stick to her previous policy that it's excessive?
Mr. Speaker, I was the one who raised the minimum wage last year as Business Secretary. I have a strong record on this, but we need to make sure that we balance the books. His scripted lines are showing that he has not even listened to the budget himself. So I will try a different question. Perhaps he can give something that is unscripted to the people watching. Farmers across the United Kingdom... Mr. Speaker.
I don't need any help. Can I just say, if somebody wants to leave, I'll be helping them do that. I'm going to hear the question, and I certainly want to hear the answer as well. So please, let's have some courtesy.
Mr. Speaker, we have heard him repeat the lines on the television, fixing the foundations and so on. But what does he say, over and over again, but what does he say to farmers who are facing uncertainty about their futures as a result of the increased taxes announced by the Chancellor? I am very clear that we would reverse Labour's cruel family farms tax. What can he say now to reassure the farming community who provide security for the whole nation?
Prime Minister.
I'm happy to help the Leader of the Opposition. If she's going to complain about scripted answers, it's probably best not to read that from a script. What I will say about farmers is this. I'm glad she's raised farmers, because the budget last week put £5 billion over the next 2 years into farming. That's the single biggest increase, unlike the £300 million, which was underspent under the last government. And when it comes to inheritance, the vast majority of farmers will be unaffected, as she well knows, as they well know. But that budget was about fixing the foundations, fixing the whole $22 billion that they left, and investing in the future of our country, investing in our NHS, investing in our schools, our hospitals and our homes. And I'm proud that that's the investment work. And if they oppose it, they should go out there and tell their constituents they're against that investment in the future of our country. That's the difference. A Labour government taking us forward. They're stuck in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm going to hear Matthew Patrick.
Mr. Speaker, Emily left her ex, but the abuse did not stop. He stayed in their home, cancelled the mortgage contributions and destroyed her credit score. Now she cannot even take out a mobile phone contract. Surviving economic abuse in UK finance have made progress tackling this issue, but more has to be done. Will the Prime Minister and his government work with me to introduce new provisions so that we can restore the credit files for survivors of economic abuse like Emily?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for raising this really important issue, because economic abuse has a devastating impact on victims, leaving them vulnerable and isolated. And we are committed to ending this national emergency and keeping women safe from domestic abuse, harassment and stalking. And Mr. Speaker, that includes £200,000 this year to the charity Surviving Economic Abuse, and HMRC have launched an online tool to help charities and businesses identify and respond to economic abuse. And I'll make sure he has a meeting with the relevant Minister.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Can I join the Prime Minister in his comments about Remembrance Sunday? We must always remember the brave British men and women who gave their lives for our country. And can I join him in welcoming the Conservative leader to her place? And can I congratulate her on becoming the first black leader of a UK-wide party, a major and historic achievement? Mr. Speaker, President-elect Trump praised Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and I quote, he called it genius. He also said he would encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they want to NATO allies. So what action is the Prime Minister taking to encourage a Trump presidency to change its mind? Because otherwise it's a huge threat to global security and to national security in the UK. Does he agree with me that the US will not oppose President Putin and support our brave Ukrainian allies? The UK must lead in Europe so that together we do.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud that in this House we are united on the question of Ukraine and clear about Russian aggression, and we will continue to do so. I've long taken the view that the only winner, if we are divided in this House, is Putin, and I'm not prepared to let that happen. Our relationship with the US is a strong relationship forged in very difficult circumstances historically. It remains as strong today as it was when it was first forged, and I look forward to working with President-elect Trump to ensure that relationship stays the special relationship.
Sir David.
I'm grateful for the Prime Minister's comments on Ukraine, but Donald Trump has also said that trade wars are good. He calls himself tariff man. People are really worried that Trump trade wars and tariff will damage our economy, damage businesses, and hit the cost of living here in the UK. So, given this, does the Prime Minister recognise that it's more urgent than ever that we support our British economy by getting rid of the damaging trade barriers with Europe put in place by the Conservatives?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as he will know, we've put the economy centrepiece to our budget, and we will do everything that we need to do to ensure our economy grows, and that's measured in living standards going up for working people across the country. Thank you.
Alex Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are so many families across Aldershot and Farnborough who have struggled for years to get their children the need they help with special educational needs. It is therefore shameful to read misguided claims that autistic people may well get better treatment and receive economic privileges and protections made by the Leader of the Opposition. Will the Prime Minister stand with families of autistic children and distance this government from those awful words?
Mr. Speaker, I'll leave the Leader of the Opposition to respond to those words. As the recent NAO report exposed, under the previous government, children with SEND were being failed by the system, and this has come up, I think, now 5 times in the last 2 or 3 weeks at PMQs. It's clearly a serious issue. Our focus will be ensuring every child receives the right support to succeed in their education.
Source Eastwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister, Northern Ireland is considered one of the most dangerous places in Europe to be a woman. In the last 4 years, 24 women have been killed. But one of the most dangerous places for women and girls is online. I also want to pay tribute to the work of Belfast and Lisburn Women's Aid, who are tireless in their advocacy for women. So what is this government doing to keep women and girls safe online, not just in Lagan Valley, but right across the United Kingdom?
Prime Minister.
Well, the right honourable member is right to draw attention to this issue. Misogyny and abuse, both online and offline, causes horrendous harm to women and girls across the UK. And can I just commend her honesty and bravery in speaking out about her own experiences and her dedication to creating safe spaces for women in her constituency. We must create a safer world online for women and girls through the Online Safety Act, mitigating the risk of illegal content and activity which is abusive or incites hatred.
Bill Coyle.
Everyone in Southwark will benefit from the positive measures in the budget last week, especially the thousands on the minimum wage getting a real terms increase to help themselves, help their families and help the economy. But the new leader of the Tory party, this week's leader, is on record as saying she wants to scrap it, having seemingly learnt nothing from July. Will the Prime Minister pledge to protect the minimum wage and increase it in this Parliament as finances allow?
Minister. Mr. Speaker, the last Labour government transformed the labour market with the national minimum wage, something which was opposed by the party opposite at the time. And sadly, they don't seem to have changed. I was surprised by the comments of the Leader of the Opposition. I was surprised to see the new Shadow Business Secretary say the minimum wage, and this is a quote, something legislators pass to make themselves feel good. I disagree, and I'm very proud of the fact that this Labour government has raised wages for 3 million of low-paid workers, and I expect the party opposite to welcome that.
George Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 14 years shaping the UK's long-term strategies for life science, agri-tech, fusion and space, I welcome the government's industrial strategy. But too many of our great companies are being bought out by our competitors. To build the industries of tomorrow here, we need to unlock some of the hundreds of billions in UK pension funds in the city, only 3% of which are now investing in UK equities. With the new Lord Mayor making this a priority and the Mansion House speech imminent, will the new government commit to see through the last government's reforms to unlock British capital for British R&D growth?
Well, I thank him for welcoming the industrial strategy, and I do know this is an issue close to his heart that he has spoken about and acted on for many years. The budget sees record numbers of R&D investment with over 20 billion next year, including over 2 billion to support our world-leading life sciences sector. And through the British Growth Partnership, we'll crowd in pension funds investment to support innovative business. And we've launched our landmark pensions Commission's review to unlock the billions of investment into the UK and boost growth and living standards across the country. Thank you.
Catherine Fuchs.
Mr. Speaker, as the Chancellor said last week, we were left a toxic legacy by the previous government, including rivers filled with polluted waste. Will the Prime Minister put the River Wye into special measures by designating it a water protection zone? And will he meet with me and the excellent cross-border Wye Catchment Partnership to deliver their plan to clean up the Wye?
Prime Minister.
The River Wye is one of our most important, iconic rivers, and we are working closely with the Welsh Government on this pressing issue. A destruction of our waterways should never have been allowed, and that's why we launched a Water Commission to attract investment and speed up infrastructure delivery. And we introduced legislation to enable tougher penalties and severe fines to crack down on polluters. I will make sure that she gets a meeting with the relevant minister.
Power of the House to Embledley.
As a good lawyer, I know the Prime Minister will want to listen to the evidence. So if the evidence mounts from experts in organisations such as the NFU that smaller family farms of average size, 250 acres, are going to be severely impacted by this tax, in a spirit of compromise, will he listen to the evidence, keep an open mind, and perhaps be prepared to raise the thresholds to preserve our family farms?
Mr. Speaker, we are listening to farmers, and the Environment Secretary and the Treasury Ministers met with the NFU on Monday of this week. We have taken a fair and balanced approach. The vast majority of farms will not be affected by this. But what I will also say this, having grown up in a rural community, I know that rural communities also need an NHS that's back on its feet. They also need schools that their children can go to and homes that their families can afford to live in. But we will continue to talk to the NFU and others.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, the Leader of the Opposition told us that any outrage in suitcases full of wine and karaoke machines in Downing Street, whilst people across the country were told to stay at home, was all overblown. For the people and businesses in my constituency who followed the rules, many of us at great personal cost, this is an insult. Will the Prime Minister join me in ensuring that as a country we learn the lessons from COVID, and as a party the Conservatives learn the lessons of their behaviour too?
Mr. Speaker, across the country, people made enormous sacrifices during COVID. They missed weddings, births, deaths, really important moments in their lives and their families' lives. In doing so, they saved the lives of people they will probably never meet. That was a collective effort, and unfortunately the party opposite who set the rules did not follow them themselves. It was a betrayal of those that did, and I think the Leader of the Opposition was wrong to describe the public anger and upset as overblown. I'm sure she'll want to clarify that at the first opportunity.
Cyfarwydd, Glan Post Nursing Home is in my constituency in Ysmôn. Tell me that the budget changes mean a 10% increase in their cost. That's a staggering £127,500 extra in-year cost. Will the Prime Minister reconsider the rise in the employer's national insurance?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what we did in the budget last week was to ensure that no one would face tax rises in their pay slip. We had to deal with the £22 billion black hole, but when we did so, we protected the smallest businesses and charities. We doubled the employment allowance to £10,500. That means that 40% of employers won't pay employers' NICs. Companies with 4 employees or less on a minimum wage will pay no employer NICs at all, and half of businesses that pay NICs will see no change or pay less after the budget. Thank you.
Bill Brickle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, my constituents in Bolton West were pleased to hear last week's budget prioritise investment in public infrastructure, including important projects such as the electrification of the Wigan to Bolton railway line, which will deliver more reliable and greener journeys. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that investment in the key infrastructure of towns such as Horwich, West Horton, Blackrod and Bolton is the only way to deliver economic growth and prosperity for all?
Prime Minister. Well, my honourable friend is a champion for the North West, and the budget secured investment for vital transport projects to transform connectivity across the north of England and drive economic growth. And that includes completing the Wigan to Bolton electrification, a really important momentum on the Northern Powerhouse Rail. Over £5 billion to support everyday journeys for working people. By restoring economic stability, increasing investment, we're taking our country forward.
Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Swan Youth Project in Berkhamsted is an incredible drop-in centre that intervenes to bring hope and a better future to teenagers like Lex and Megan who've been facing anxiety, depression and long mental health waiting lists, as well as families coping with SEND. They've already written to the Treasury saying that they're worried about getting the funds that they need as our communities face a tough winter and grants are depleting. Parole, the manager, also assures me that she makes a mean curry and would welcome the Prime Minister. So will the Prime Minister join me to discuss their concerns and ensure that organisations in the third sector like theirs get the support that they need as they work tirelessly for our communities?
Prime Minister.
She'll be pleased now. I've been to Berkhamsted a number of times. We've got very good friends who live there. And I want to pay tribute to the work of the Swan Youth Project because too many young people, she's cited some, are struggling with mental health and not receiving the support that they need. And that's why we will recruit an additional 8,500 mental health workers and are introducing reforms to the Mental Health Act, long overdue, and that's happening today. Of course, we will also put more money into SEND, but we also need to look at reforming SEND, something that I think and hope will be supported across this House, and I'll make sure she gets a meeting with the relevant ministers about that.
My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, will know that after 14 years of Tory ideological hostility and cuts, our universities are in financial meltdown. In my own constituency of Norwich South, the University of East Anglia is having to make redundancies, as are many others. Our honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Education, has started to address the problem, but we need a longer-term solution that doesn't simply saddle more debt on our young people. So can my right honourable friend say how we can move to fix the foundations of higher education as we go forward?
Prime Minister.
I thank him for that question. He's right to raise higher education because we inherited a sector facing severe financial challenges. Universities have suffered real terms decline in their income, and the gap between disadvantaged students and their peers is the highest on record. We've had to take tough decisions to put that on a secure footing, but we are also taking the step of easing the living pressures by increasing the maintenance loans, which is worth £414 extra per year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Alex Brooke.
Hamilton, former sub-postmistress and constituent of North East Hampshire, has long been campaigning along with Alan Bates for compensation following the Horizon Post Office scandal. Can the Prime Minister give an exact time frame in which those who have been waiting over a decade might finally be compensated?
I'm grateful to her for raising this important issue because a commitment was made to properly compensate the victims of this scandal. Unfortunately, regrettably, having made that commitment, the party opposite, when in government, didn't allocate any money to that compensation. Her constituents will be pleased to know that we have changed the approach there. We've set out the compensation within the budget, a transparent budget, an accountable budget, and we'll make the payments just as soon as we can.
Torquil Triton.
Speaker, may I quickly echo the Prime Minister's sentiments to that other son of Lewis, though I wish I had woken up today in the Isle of Harris. My constituents there face long delays, cancellations and loss of service because of the SNP's incompetent handling of ferry procurement. In In last week's budget, the Scottish Government received a record settlement. Can I urge the Prime Minister to tell Scottish ministers to use that to improve public service in Scotland, to invest in the NHS in Hill and Year, to build schools in places like Barra, and to finally fix the ferry fiasco?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, last week in the budget we delivered the largest settlement for the Scottish Government in real terms since devolution. That includes £3.4 billion through the Barnett formula, a fuel duty freeze, an increase to the national living wage, benefiting his constituencies and all those across Scotland. And the result of the budget is now clear. The SNP in power in Scotland have the powers, they now have the money, they've got no more excuses.
Better be objected.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister really think it is acceptable for a backbench MP to suggest that the Leader of the Opposition represents white supremacy in blackface and is the most prominent member of white supremacy's black collaborator class, with all the race traitor innuendo that carries? And if he doesn't, why hasn't he removed the whip?
Prime Minister.
No, I don't.
John Swinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a semi-retired violinist and rock musician asking a semi-retired multi-instrumentalist, I feel confident that the Prime Minister shares my belief in the importance of music education. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that as we unleash the potential of our country, we must invest in the educational infrastructure of creative arts subjects so that they're accessible to all? And will he visit my constituency to see the great work of the schools there, despite the inheritance we received?
Prime Minister.
I'm not sure about the description semi-retired, although that may be the wish of the party opposite. But on music, what I do know from personal experience is music, the creatives and art are really important for children and young people in terms of the pleasure it gives them, the knowledge, but the working in groups and the leadership. And that's why we are determined to ensure that they are counted subjects again within the curriculum, which will encourage many more schools to provide it within the curriculum and enrich the futures of children and young people across the country.
James Cleverly.
Before the election, he claimed that he would not put up national insurance contributions. He put it up. Before the election, he claimed he would scrap tuition fees. He put it up. Before the election, he said he would not tax family farms. He's taxing family farms. Will he address his party's growing reputation for dishonesty by making good on his commitment to close the Wethersfield Asylum Accommodation Centre in my constituency?
Mr. Speaker, we're keeping the promises we made in our manifesto. His problem is he can't add up. If he could add up, he might be down here rather than up there. And we'll take up the issue of his constituency.
Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Monday of this week marked the 7-year anniversary of my constituent Jakhtar Singh Johal's arbitrary detention in India. Can the Prime Minister assure me that he and his government will do all they can to secure his immediate release and bring him home?
Yes, we're absolutely committed to pushing the Government of India on this really important case. And the Foreign Secretary has raised it and will continue to do so, and we'll make sure that we speak to him as we do.
Right, that completes Prime Minister's questions.
Keir Starmer taking questions for the first time from Kemi Badenoch. We're going to stay with the Commons as soon as the new Shadow Home Secretary gets to his feet, because he's got an urgent question today on the small boats crisis, which we will see who from the Labour Party will be responding to.
That's right, but a question to you quickly, if I may, while you're here, Gareth. Julie, our viewer, says she's not impressed by Kemi Badenoch. She needs coaching. She's too weak. Do you agree with that? Your new leader? I know you backed Robert Jenrick in the campaign. You might agree with that.
No, I'm afraid I disagree with Julie, to shock and horror on your face, I'm sure. But I thought she did a great job today exposing the the lack of preparedness of this Labour government when it comes to international relations, as well as the detrimental impact of this budget of broken promises.
We better go back to the chamber now.
This may be a point of order because this is the Leader of the House, Lucy Powell. So we will stay with Josh, Labour representative from Makerfield, the MP from Makerfield now. Now, Julie may have had some unkind words about Kemi, but come on, Keir Starmer. He's not a gifted orator. He doesn't think on his feet, does he, at Prime Minister's questions?
Well, I thought you saw a few good quips there from the Prime Minister, actually. And what Keir is a man that's focused on delivering and getting outcomes.
OK, here we go. New Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp. Here he goes.
Increase in dangerous, illegal and unnecessary channel crossings by small boat.
Mr. Speaker, for too long smuggling gangs have been undermining our border security and putting lives at risk, which is why the new government has made it a top priority to address the crisis we inherited. And let us be clear about what that crisis entailed. Small boat crossings in the first half of the year at their highest point on record, and over 100,000 arrivals in the 5 years prior. Over 200,000 cases stuck in the asylum system, costing the taxpayer billions in support, and 700 million spent on a gimmick that sent just 4 volunteers to Rwanda. When we entered government, we said it was time for grip, not gimmicks, and that is exactly what we are delivering. Since July, we have established the Border Security Command, headed up by experienced Police Chief Martin Hewitt. In the King's Speech, we set out our intention to bring forward legislation to give the border security system stronger powers to investigate and prosecute organised immigration crime. We're recruiting 100 new specialist agency and investigation officers at the National Crime Agency to target and dismantle the criminal networks behind this phenomenon. And we have announced an extra 75 million to bolster border security, bringing our investment in the Border Security Command over the next 2 years to £150 million. This government's border security funding boost will go towards a range of enforcement and intelligence activities and capabilities, including covert technology, as well as hundreds of staff and specialist investigators as we crank up the pressure on the smuggling gangs. This is an international problem requiring international solutions. Since the general election, we have intensified cooperation with partners overseas. We recently struck a new anti-smuggling action plan with G7 partners, and the Prime Minister and Home Secretary both attended the Interpol General Assembly in Glasgow on Monday to press the case for a much stronger and more integrated global response to organised immigration crime. As well as tackling this issue upstream, we've taken action to speed up decision-making and stepped up returns of those with no right to be in this country. The result of all this action is 9,400 returns since this government took office, including a 19% increase in enforced returns and a 14% increase in returns of foreign national offenders. Mr. Speaker, sticking plasters and gimmicks have failed. The smugglers and traffickers have been getting away with it for far too long. It's time to show them we're serious, not with words, but with action. The security of Britain's borders is paramount, and under this government, it always will be.
Shadow Leader of the House, Chris.
Shadow Home Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm afraid the government's actions belie the reality. Since they came to office, 17,520 people have crossed the English Channel, more than twice the number they've removed. That is 1.5 times the number in the previous 4 months, and it is 15% more than the same period last year. In October alone, last month, 5,417 people crossed. That is 3 times higher than last October. And tragically, since this government came to office, 50 people have lost their lives or have gone missing. That is more than the previous 18 months put together. And tragically, that includes 16 women and children. Now, this government they chose to cancel the Rwanda scheme before it had even started. The first flight was due to take off, I believe, from memory, on the 24th of July, but they cancelled it. Now, had they allowed that flight to go ahead, had they allowed the scheme to continue, the deterrent effect would by now have started, and we know it works.
We know it works because it worked in Australia under their Operation Sovereign Borders about 10 years ago. We know the deterrent effect of returns works because it worked with Albania, where we secured a 93% reduction in arrivals. And don't take my word for it, the National Crime Agency said that law enforcement alone is not enough, and you need an effective removal scheme in order to deter crossings. Their announcements in Glasgow on Monday are simply not enough, and they simply repeat work underway already. But it's not just the NCA and me saying we need a returns deterrent. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen encouraged member states just a few weeks ago to develop their own returns hubs outside of the EU. So will she follow Ursula von der Leyen's advice and urgently implement offshore processing? Might I also draw attention to the success Belgium has had in stopping boats by the shore? Will she ask France to do the same? And finally, Mr. Speaker, because of their failings, Labour is breaking their manifesto pledge to end hotel use. So will she pledge not to open any more hotels?
There you have it, Chris Philp, the new Shadow Home Secretary, with a question which won't be easy for the government to answer. Will you stop opening new migrant hotels? But let's think back now to PMQs, what we've just seen, Kemi Badenoch against Keir Starmer. Josh Simons, how did you think that battle went? Do you think that Keir Starmer was relaxed facing questions from Kemi Badenoch? I thought the questions were quite punchy about you know, what's your view on the remarks you have said and others have said about Donald Trump, the new president-elect?
I think what you'll see in this exchange is Kemi Badenoch, you know, says what's on her mind. It's very unpredictable. She gets herself into places where she's saying things that do not actually represent what most people think, like, for example, that the Partygate crisis was overblown. Most people don't think that. Keir is a very, very disciplined, focused leader, and he will always stay focused on delivering for the people of this country, and who knows where Kemi Badenoch will end up.
So Donald Trump did feature pretty big at that PMQs. Adrian from Northumberland has been in touch. It was a question that Kemi Badenoch put to the Prime Minister. Didn't get very far. Adrian from Northumberland asked, should David Lammy, the Labour Foreign Secretary, apologise because of the comments that he has made in the past, before he held that position, about Donald Trump, which are on social media, being repeated everywhere today. It doesn't bode well for a good relationship, does it?
Well, Donald Trump is a transactional guy. He's focused on the interests of the United States and the people of America, not on tweets and words. And something people often don't know about David Lammy is that he's a Christian. He's a man who's worked with J.D. Vance on child poverty, you know, both Christian men. And actually that relationship building that goes back a long way, well before Donald Trump was, you know, president and well before the last 24 hours, that will actually stand Britain, I think, in very good stead.
Should he apologise? That's what Adrian wants to know from Northumberland.
That's up to David Lammy whether he apologises.
Would you apologise if he said similar things about...
Well, I haven't said similar things, so that's an absurd hypothetical to be asking. If I say things like that, then I can come back on and talk to you about whether or not I would apologise. But, you know, that's not what I actually... I respect what the American people have decided. They've spoken, democracy has acted, and the thing the government have to do now is get the best deal for working people in this country.
They're supposed to be your sister party, actually. I mean, they always have been your sister party. Would you have voted for Donald Trump, Gareth?
I'm not... I mean, talk about hypotheticals. I vote for the Conservative Party here in Britain, but
would you have? You
look,
just imagine. Who were you cheering on last night? Come on, nobody went to sleep. You were all up watching it, surely.
Whoever wins the election, we have to work with them in a very constructive way. And if there was ever a whiff that somebody wanted to get into power, to be Foreign Secretary or even Prime Minister, the last thing that you do is attack a future president or a former president or a current president in the way that this Foreign Secretary has. I think it is humiliating for the Labour Party today that they have this new president re-elected. I think they have to rebuild the bridges that they burnt in the interests of Britain, as I have said earlier.
On that point, Josh Simons, Nigel Farage, presenter on GB News, also the leader of Reform UK Party, 4 million votes the election, 5 MPs. He's offering to help broker that relationship. Should Sir Keir Starmer accept that offer from Nigel Farage to mend that fence with Donald Trump?
Well, I've heard Nigel say that on GB News before, and I think it underestimates, there are people in the Foreign Service, there are people in our defence and intelligence establishment who worked with the United States and the American defence and intelligence establishment all the way through the Trump presidency. Britain knows how to find partnership with America, regardless of Nigel Farage's help. And I think, David Lammy has been working on that relationship. And I very much hope now that it will bear fruits in trade and in defence and security policy when it's badly needed.
And we all need that, by the way. They are our closest ally. The red light is flashing across the world. There are a number of conflicts that need resolving, both with the United States and the UK and NATO, and it's very important that we work together with our closest ally. That's why I think Kemi Badenoch led on this, because it is of concern that when you have comments like this, it is going to disrupt that relationship. That's why they need to rebuild that trust, rebuild that bridge with America, with President Trump as soon as possible.
Do you really think the special relationship's under threat? Or is that just sort of rhetoric speaking? Do you really think this Labour government is a threat to our special relationship with America under Trump?
I wouldn't use that characterisation, but the fact is that comments have been made that may disrupt that relationship, and the way to resolve that is to move forward, yes, but to row back and apologise, I think, to the new president.
Just moving on from the Trump win, Josh Simons, we had a question here from Janet. Janet, do say where you're from next time, please. But Janet says farmers need that dreadful inheritance tax abolishing. You know what she means, don't you? He was asked also in the chamber there. We didn't hear that from Sir Keir Starmer. He won't even apparently meet the National Farmers Union yet. Is that a mistake?
Well, I think the mistake that's been made is Kemi Badenoch's. She's come out saying that she's going to reverse the VAT on private schools. So she's going to basically take money off state schools and give a tax break to private schools. She said she's going to reverse the inheritance tax changes in farms. She's going to take that money away from the NHS. That was a real mistake. And I think that, middle-class people who might be watching this show, who are paying a 40% inheritance tax, when they hear that farms might pay a 20% inheritance tax above £3 million, I'm actually not sure they will think that's fair.
But their livelihood is these farms. They haven't got 200,000 quid on £1 million sitting behind the sofa. They will break these farms up.
Well, as you know, Chris, there's a 10-year period. Unlike it being paid immediately, as middle-class families would have to do on that 40%, there's a 10-year period to pay that. I think of course we have to respect the people who produce the food of this nation. But I think the idea that this tax change is the thing that's going to cause the problem to farming, which has long been suffering under the Conservative government, that's just a red herring.
Gareth, is there a danger that you're forced into a position of sort of opposing everything, that you oppose for opposition's sake, and that actually your figures will not add up, or you will not be trusted if you say, oh, we're going to reverse that spending commitment, or we're going to reverse, that spending cut, we're going to reverse that tax-raising measure, then actually you may become less serious as a party when it comes to protecting the public finances. They're already trying to lay the blame for all these decisions on the fact that the last government left the country's finances in a mess.
Which has been completely debunked by the independent auditor, which is the OBR. But just on that point,
it has absolutely not.
It's very important that we clear this up, because the OBR did come out and say that they cannot legitimise this apparent black hole that they've created. But on the family farm tax, I think it was right that Kemi raised this, because farmers are extremely concerned. It is a matter of dismay, I think, among farmers that Keir Starmer won't even meet with the National Farmers Union. And I think what really gripes them most is that they ruled this out ahead of the election. This is another broken promise by this Labour government, who, when they were trying to get votes, they said one thing, as soon as they get in, they do another. And this is going to really detrimentally impact the family farm at a time when we need to be focused on food security.
The OBR, far from saying that the 22 billion black hole left by your government was debunked, actually said that the figures given to the Treasury in March made the previous estimates that they had in March made them effectively useless, and that's why they redid them. And what this government has chosen to do is put the public finances on sound public footing and make sure that the people who pay for that are not the working people of this country who for a long time
I think a lot of businesses would regard themselves, business people would regard themselves as working people, and they've just been hit with £40 billion of tax, which even if the 22 billion was correct,
working people in this country,
I'm sorry, Josh, even if the 22 billion was correct, which it's not, 40 billion is double that figure.
10 years under your government.
Gentlemen. I want to bring Wendy in, who's sent in an email. Labour constantly talk about investing as compared to spending. What do they consider the difference?
So the change in the fiscal rules is a really important fundamental shift in how we think about economic policy in this country. Hospitals, buildings, equipment, machines,
You're still spending our money, right?
centre, that's investing in capital spending. Wages, public sector wages, you know, buying books and pencils and so on, that's day-to-day spending. Investment is this pot, and it's a really good thing that we're investing in this country.
Come back in on that. The taxpayer will get
it's other people's money, Gloria. It's other people's money. When Keir Starmer stood up at the Prime Minister's question and said, we're raising national living wage, we're raising people's wages, the government isn't raising wages, it's businesses that are raising wages. Just as when they spend money, it is other people's money. And this is what Labour, time and time again, get wrong. It is other people's money. Labour spending
would you not
badly.
invest in hospitals?
We
Would you
already
not invest in
we had
schools in this
record
country?
spending in
Would
the
you cut back
NHS.
capital
But the
investment?
difference, Josh, is that
Would
we
you
will
not build
reform the
data
NHS
centres?
and we will improve productivity. Labour will not.
The thing in answer to the question that these guys have to answer now is what would they stop investing in now that we are investing? That's the question they've got to answer, and they are not willing to be
The Labour Party clearly wants to still be in opposition because they keep asking us the questions. They have to realise they are in power now, they are in government. It's time to take responsibility for your broken promises and the betrayal of the British people who did not vote for any of
Gareth
this.
Davis, we are out of time.
Will you come
Carry
back?
on.
Yeah.
Let's carry on later.
Only if Josh does.
Okay,
Bring the wives next time.
Good afternoon, Britain, with Miriam and Emily. What's in your show, both?
Oh, we have such a good show lined up. Of course, we're going to be continuing the reaction to Donald Trump's win. He's back in the White House.
Indeed, and we've got some fantastic guests coming on, including one of the only pollsters to have correctly called the Trump victory, which is James Johnson, a British pollster. We've got Matt Goodwin coming on.
Yes, we've got Matt Goodwin. We've also got Rakib Hassan, who has quite a lot of interesting things to say about the demographics, the demographic shift in those election results. Very interesting.
So lots to come.
Lots to come.
What a thrilling show coming up. We can't wait, can we, Gloria?
Nice to see Miriam.
I can't hear the gallery.
Nice to see Miriam Cates. You have been watching and listening to PMQs Live with Gloria DePiero and Chris Hope and our fabulous panel, Josh and Gareth. Don't go anywhere, because up next it's Good Afternoon Britain with Miriam and Emily while Tom catches up on a bit of kip.
It's a must-watch after an amazing evening and even overnight in politics. Tune in.
Thank you. Do come back again. You were very...
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. As we go through the rest of today and, well, the rest of this week, really, it is going to stay pretty cloudy for many of us. And with that, there will be some drizzly rain around. A generally dry picture, though, because we are still under the influence of high pressure. That high, well, to the east of us, but nonetheless, it's trapping this cloud that we've had for many days already and keeping things pretty grey through today. There will be a bit of rain around, nothing especially heavy, some outbreaks of drizzly rain here and there, but also some glimmers of brightness, especially towards the north of the UK. Now, temperatures will be around average, perhaps even a little bit above for some of us, especially where we do get any brightness, highs of around 17 Celsius. As we go through this evening, and there will still be some clear breaks in a few places, perhaps northeast Scotland seeing some clear skies to start the night, further south across more central western parts